get more view or downloads than
Yeah, people just want to hear us drink. So much for our carefully thought out topics and all this.
We like your show, except for the thinking. Yeah.
exactly. Well,
The thinking and
AI
preparation.
intro
Yeah.
says it best. Don't listen to us
Yeah.
for advice.
Have an 8-hour restriction on listening to this podcast before you fly.
I'm glad that Mark said something there. I was just about to say, I want to make sure we're actually live here because, we need confirmation, and Mark brought it, so that's great.
Is White Claw really drinking? Hey, I'm all out of my the White Claws that I was left with.
Yes.
They're gone now. I think I've had over the last, I guess that was maybe 2 months ago that I got left those, and I think I got left 7 of them, and so it took me a couple of months, but I drank seven White Claws.
And the hangover is just now going away.
I didn't get a hangover from. I'll tell you what I get a hangover from is, unfortunately, high octane beer. And IPAs. I love IPAs, but it's just instant. It's not even wait till tomorrow to feel bad. I start feeling bad, within an hour, kind of thing. It's not.
Hey Dale, we've got somebody new in the in the live stream there.
Nice.
Nice to see you.
Should I go get a whiskey? Should we get whiskeys and just do that instead of our topic, or what?
I got really excited about my scenario that I wanted to present tonight. So we can do that if you want to. That's it's your world.
It's your world.
I'm happy to be in it.
You should have seen the. I was talking to the guy at the airport today, breaking the ice about the event and what's happening, and it was pretty funny because he immediately said he started to get a sense of, how many people were coming and all. He basically said, "Here's the person that you need to email this person." But I think we're gonna be able to get, our own little spot.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about it. Maybe we'll give everybody an update on the where we are. Not that there is that much of an update, but
updates are good.
Yeah.
But yeah, it looks like the chat's starting to happen. You want to just get on with it?
Let's go. Yeah. Let's go for it. What do you say, Ted?
Let's do it.
Welcome to the Midlife Pilot Podcast. What is it like to become a pilot in midlife? The challenges are unique, but so are the rewards. Hosts Ben, Brian, and Ted talk learning to fly, growing as pilots, and the joy of flying to destinations. The purpose of the podcast is not to teach, but to share knowledge and experiences. Don't forget, the Midlife Pilot Podcast Nashville fly-in is April 26th, 27th, and 28th. While the Midlife compound is sold out, there are plenty of options to stay nearby. Join us, and we apologize in advance if Ben does karaoke. Okay, checklists are complete. Let's get the show started.
Welcome to the Midlife Pilot Podcast, episode 62, where we talk all things flying and aviation in midlife. As our announcer said at the beginning, my name is Ben, and you do not have to worry about me singing karaoke at the fly-in, so don't change your plans. I couldn't carry a tune if you strapped it on my back, and I'm fully aware of that. I'm a commercial rated pilot here in Atlanta, flying a Cessna 182 I like to call the Beast. Joining me tonight, as always, my friend Brian, who is a private pilot with a tailwheel rating in Nashville, home of the Bachelorette Super Charlie. He flies a Cherokee 180 named Lucy. Hey, Brian.
How's it going, Ben?
Going very well, thank you. Also joining us tonight from the left coast, the west coast, Ted, our sport pilot extraordinaire, and Portlandia, flying the flight design CTLS, we like to call the Egg.
The
Hey,
egg.
Ted.
Yes. Yeah. Had some fun flying lately, but you got some new paint.
Got new paint. I wasn't expecting a lot. So we had chips here. We had some chips of paint on the leading edge, some cracking on the cowling of the paint, and it was kind of like my beat up old Toyota that I used to have, and it was just kind of its personality. Now, I mean, it looks good. And now I'm like scared to take it out and bugs are going to get on it. I mean, it looks really nice. So, um, I'd like to think that my brother-in-law did this just for the fly-in, but honestly, it's been planned for a while. So, but yeah, it's looking good. Thanks for asking about that.
Is that the kind of thing where you what is the airplane equivalent of parking your car at the very back of the parking lot so no shopping carts hit it? I mean, like, if you are on the ramp somewhere now, are you just going to park as far away as possible?
Just going to tie it down on the ramp and then just go out there every day and polish it and just never fly it so no bugs will get on it. I mean, I think that's kind of maybe similar to it. A lot of people are asking for pics. I have some pics, but it just doesn't do it justice right now. I need to wait for a prettier day to take the pictures. So I'll try to maybe get that out on the Discord server or something. But yeah, it's I'm excited about it. It does look good. A little bit more ramp appeal maybe this time around. So
and a couple knots.
Exactly. I mean, now I'm getting 170 knots, no problem whatsoever. It just it's hard to slow the thing down.
Less fuel burn.
Yeah. Instead of burning 40 gallons an hour, I'm only burning 35. That's what it feels like sometimes. That's for sure. Let's take care of a few housekeeping things. We broadcast live every Tuesday night on YouTube. Most Tuesday nights, let me say, at 8 p.m. Eastern, youtube.com/@midlifepilotpodcast. We've got about 17 people in the live chat. It's an active group. It's always fun to watch their comments. So please join us on Tuesday nights. You can listen to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple, iTunes, wherever you get them. Please leave us a 5-star review. We did get a review recently. Maybe one of us can scramble to pull that up, but it was great feedback, or a nice review, nice 5-star review. And lastly, we'd love getting feedback and your suggestions. Email us at midlifepilotpodcast@gmail.com. And whatever you want to, if you got show suggestions, comments, whatever you feel like sharing with us, please feel free to reach out. We love hearing from you. Brian, we've got a new announcement regarding the Patreon. You want to tell us about it? Who we're donating to now, maybe?
Right. Okay. It's funny because there's moments where I just think, oh, right, we're doing a podcast right now, and I should actually know what the next thing is. By the way, side note, before I get into that, yes, a new review on Apple Podcasts. Fantastic. Really nice. Very kind. 5-star review from Not Carry V.E. Foot. Maybe there's some way of reading this that I don't know how to read it, and it's something really clever, but I'm not able to pick it up. But anyway, the title of the review said episode 60. So this is a couple episodes ago, and it says, probably the best episode thus far. I loved how Erica was breaking down the calculus of establishing and holding yourself accountable for minimums. I'd love to learn more from her. Thanks to all. So shout out to Erica Gilbert of AeroSafe. Go check out our YouTube channel. And clearly, she's elevating our game because people are now writing in just to talk about her, which makes total sense. So that's a really cool thing and a very kind review. So thank you for that. But yes, getting into specifically Patreon. Obviously, we talked a good bit last week about what it all means, why we're doing it the way that we're doing it. But there was one layer that we just hadn't had in place yet that we needed to have in place before we could really talk about it. And we did put a note out to our patrons, so you've all seen it. But we are going to actually, let me just put this in the hopper. If you're not doing this for a reason, then why are you doing it? We are all putting a lot of time and energy into this. People are putting time and energy into joining us. People are putting time and energy into sending us feedback or whatever, being a part of the thing, the Discord, all of the things. Well, you have to have something, I think, that's a little bit larger than yourself in all of this. And so you may remember from an episode a while back, I want to say it was episode 37, and we had Stephanie and Jared from the Freedom Aviation Network on, and they explained at length their organization, how it came to be, and who they're serving and what they need. And so we're happy to be in a place now where we are committing to sending 10% of all of our monthly Patreon, whatever that is, we just bundle that up and we drop it straight to them. And so the Freedom Aviation Network, without getting into all of that, please go listen to episode 37. But ultimately, it serves to transport people that need efficient, safe, sometimes fairly quick transportation to get out of situations that involve human trafficking. And then it also covers their advocates. And I also highly recommend that you sign up to become a pilot on their website, which is freedomaviationnetwork.org. And one other thing I want to throw out there really quickly, sorry to go on about this.
That's fine.
Is a couple episodes ago on Opposing Bases, shout out to Opposing Bases, and thanks for giving us a shout out. We're just going to play shout out ping pong. So a couple of episodes ago, they spoke to something that I thought was really important. And it's something that really spoke to where I am right now in my flying, I think, which is that early on, you don't want to take on a lot of external pressure, a lot of external responsibilities. You don't want to take flights that are got to get there. It's scheduled. I've got people counting on me, all those things. But I think on the path to, and Ben, you'll be able to speak to this more maybe, but on the path more to a commercial rating, you have now been more so equipped to handle those kinds of decisions and to do them, do those kinds of flights in the right way. Now, that does not mean, though, if you don't have a commercial rating, that you can't fly for Angel Flights or Pilots and Paws or Freedom Aviation Network or any number of these kinds of organizations. And Opposing Bases did a great job of saying that basically that is something that is a really valuable thing to do, to build, even as a private pilot, not even, commercial or anything like that. And you don't even have to be instrument rated for a lot of these things too, right? To be working on that ADM and to be taking on those pressures in a healthy, responsible, staged way is going to make you a better pilot. And so yet another reason to support the Freedom Aviation Network. If you're one of our patrons, you're already doing that. You can also go to their website and volunteer. And they're looking for people all over the country. The type of network that they're building, it really requires people from all over. So that's what I got.
That's I don't know if I told y'all this, but I actually signed up for a mission. It was a really cool experience. Unfortunately, the mission didn't happen. But the morning of, the person was not able to be transported, and so we had to scrub it. But the 12 hours or 24 hours leading up to it, it was pretty cool stuff. They're doing it the right way, legally, not only through the FAA but through all other channels. Excuse me. And yeah, I'm pretty anxious to get my first mission under the belt. So I think like you said, it's a great organization. The other thing that I wanted to update regarding housekeeping is we have finally, and this is no disrespect to my co-host, we have a wonderful website. And everything is there. I don't have to keep telling you 12 different places to connect with us. You can go to midlifepilotpodcast.com. And there you can link to YouTube, you can link to Patreon, you can link to eventually the merch store. We're redoing some stuff there. So you can go check it out. You can send us a voice message. You can send us a text message, however you want to do it. So please go check it out. Yes, our pretty website.
And by the way, hey, that was feedback driven too, because
Yes.
we had somebody email us and say, hey, I was just trying to find out when you guys are doing your YouTube live recordings for these podcasts. And it wasn't even on our kind of automagical RSS feed website that was essentially a placeholder. But they basically said like, hey, more or less it was like, get it together, guys. Like, what are you doing? And so we did.
The easiest thing for us to do, and it's the last thing we did. So
Yeah.
Also want to take a moment real quick to thank our new Patreon members. In the Hershey Bar category, we have Nabil A and Cheryl O. I believe I saw Cheryl in the chat. Thank you very much. And in the Lando-Matic tier, we have Chris M. So thank you all for your support. We really do appreciate it. So what do you say we talk about complacency?
Yeah, let's do it.
I mean, I feel like I haven't even really thought about it very much,
You're being complacent about being complacent?
Yeah.
Something like that?
No, this is great. I'm so happy that we're doing this. And this, I think, is a perfect dovetail from what we were on last week. So this is great.
Brian, why don't you kick us off, and we'll kind of go around the horn, and I'll finish it up because I have a scenario that I want to present to you two and to our live stream chat, and then maybe we can get some feedback from the audio listeners as to what they think. So why don't you kick us off?
Absolutely. So we wanted to talk about ways to combat complacency, not necessarily to be taken as instruction or anything like that. It's more about real world ways of looking at things that you might encounter as a midlife pilot, and perhaps not doing it for a career, most likely not doing it for a career. We are, I think, in a position to have a couple of challenges. One is that we haven't, in many cases, been doing this for very long. And so the way that we're building habits means a lot, and how we behave means a lot. How we execute our flights means a lot. And at the same time, we're not headed towards something where the requirements get more stringent and the training becomes more rigorous, or now we're going to this company and now we're, so we don't have that to sort of rein in the loose ends. And we're living in the general aviation world. We're not, in most cases, looking to move on. Although, by the way, side note, Ben, I was coming in on a very long left base at John Toon today, getting vectored by B&A, and then on the opposite side they had a King Air coming in, and it was sort of like a race to see who could get to the extended center line before. And they kept trying to turn me to sort of get the sequencing together, and eventually I was sort of wondering, when are they going to turn us, or something's got to give, and I know that they're going to give preference to the King Air, and then finally they gave me another vector going slightly further away from the airport, and then let him go number one. But the controller said, he's kind of, I'm sorry, I got to give you, just if you can give me another, whatever it was, 20 degrees to the right or something. You guys kind of tied there. It was a tie. And I was so close to just saying, that's got to be the first time that a Cherokee has ever tied a King Air anywhere. So it's amazing how many things I think of to say that I don't say. So restraint, good thing.
So on that topic, I had flown across town to get gas and flown back. And when I was coming back, there were some students doing pattern work, and the tower made them do a 360 so I could come in. I was like, okay, that's great. I feel, like I feel important here. They're doing a 360. I go land, and I'm taxiing back as they're finally coming in on final. And there's some birds, and of course I scare them, and I'm like, they're almost all away from the runway, and so I think they're going to go away from the runway. They all turn and go across the runway. And I get on, and it's on the tower frequency, and I was like, birds 3-2 right, and like I don't even bother making a good call, and they had to go around, so they did a 360 and then go around. I guess maybe it's good training, but it was like, it was just funny to have that set of circumstances.
If their CFI was with them, they really appreciated it because they're just building on those Hobbs times. So
totally, yeah.
Well,
but getting back to complacency.
Yes, no. This is how we roll.
Yeah.
So in that spot that we are in, which I think is most of us, I think one of the first things that I see sometimes around me in other pilots that have been similar in their journey, I feel like that they have not maintained a healthy fear. And I think that that's kind of where it starts. If you're not cultivating and maintaining a healthy fear, then this is where you're going to start having these things kind of go sideways. And so what I've been about, and what I think is a great way to combat complacency, is to just observe it in other people around you, and then ask yourself, are you doing the same things? Sometimes it's easier to see those things when they're external to you. Another way of doing that is not so nitpicky is, we're always going to come back to this, but the killing zone. There are so many examples in the killing zone. Highly recommend it. Everybody should read it more than once. Read it before you train, read it in the middle of your training, read it once you're out on your own, and you'll have a different take on it and a different look every time. But when I see the stories of two pilots taking a plane somewhere, stopping for fuel, and taking off with no gas caps on either wing, and ending up in a bad situation and crashing, essentially forced landing, because they just kind of thought the other guy got it. So it's really important, I think, to have a healthy fear that you maintain, cultivate that fear in a constructive way, and find ways to observe that around you. Look for it in other people's practices, and then ask yourself the same questions, and then read the killing zone. So those are really, if I had one thing, that's kind of the umbrella one thing.
I like how you phrase it, cultivating healthy fear. Look, we're all scared of dying, and we know that could happen anytime we're in the airplane, and it doesn't end there. It's making sure that you continually understand that if something goes wrong because you've done something that you forgot to do, it's not you're going to go to jail. It's not you're going to get a speeding ticket or you're going to get a fine. It's your life could be at stake. So I think that's great.
Yeah. Killing Zone does a good job of categorizing those errors and trying to pick up on the largest categories that have happened over the years, and that's part of why it's such a good reminder. My way of battling complacency is similar to that, which is I pay a lot of attention to the crash analysis. I'm not looking to rubberneck or to blame the pilots or look at how they did something wrong and I'm a lot better than that. It's having that healthy respect for it and thinking that could have easily been me, and what is it that I'm doing that I'm going to end up in the same situation or in a similar situation. And I mean, another way to put that is, what's the first line of your NTSB crash report going to look like? What's it going to be? He skipped looking for his fuel caps because his plane was in his locked hangar. Where else could they have gone? Right? Whatever it is, how are you writing that? And I've always thought about that in the way of, how are you going to explain this when you end up in ER? Like when you're working around the house and you're leaning to clean the gutters and you're about to fall off the ladder.
I love that your whole thing is like more geared towards fear of mortal embarrassment as opposed to just straight death.
Well, it's really
worse than dying.
These are the obvious dumb things that are going to be hard to explain if you did it. So it is embarrassment, but it's really there's no justification for it, right? And that's why I like using the example of leaning on the ladder for gutters, because I think that like every man who's about age 60 that ends up in the hospital, it's because they fell off a ladder. Like there's something. It's very specific. I don't know what that is, but. And
so
I don't.
We should address that more than even the flying stuff, right? It sounds like we're all coming up on that, right? So maybe we need to start talking about ladders here.
Ladders and gutter safety. Yes, that's the pivot of the podcast.
Your point is good, though, Ted. For some reason or another, Blancalario's channel has been popping up my feed a lot, or maybe he's just producing a lot. But there is a continuous theme throughout his videos, and now it resonates in my mind nonstop. And that is, you can stall an airplane at any speed, which is a great reminder to have. But it's repeated over and over and over again in his videos. And so, to your point, watching these post-crash and trying to learn from them, it's I think it's valuable.
Yeah.
Do you know what? I just learned recently what Blanco Lirio means and why that's the name of his channel. I didn't even know this. But it means white lily.
Yep.
And it was his wife's
channel.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's just inherited just whatever channel was there. I love that. Gosh, that's such a trip, fall, succeed story.
Also, it seems like a very midlife thing.
Reviews channel is basically what he's saying it is. So yeah, I saw that episode 2 where he announced it, but that's cool.
Yeah.
So I guess it's my turn. We have a visual that we're going to put up, and so for our audio only audience, I'll do my best to describe. I didn't know we
could use visual aids, Ben. This is you're the kid doing the book report last purposefully so that you can come up and just
you're right. So to set the stage, Saturday we got the paint out of plane out of paint, and it was cured and it was ready to fly. It had been about 10 days since I've flown, and I had my middle son was home from school. Go Jackets. And I decided he was wearing his Georgia Tech hoodie. So I said, well, let's pop over to Athens and see if we can't get beat up. But not really. It was just I hadn't been to the airport in a while. I wanted to shoot an instrument approach, whether it was practice or actual, either way. And he said, hey, Dad, Road Atlanta is really close by there on the way back. Can we go circle it and let me get some photos? He's really into cars. He loves everything about it. He follows F1 really closely. So I said, sure, we can do that. And we found it. We landed in Athens and we pulled up my iPad and we looked at the map and we found where the racetrack was. And honestly, I said, yeah, that's on the way. It's just north of Gwinnett County. It's south of Gainesville Airport. I've flown in that area a bunch. I knew it. I knew the area very well. And also, at the time, it wasn't on the top of my mind, but there is a tower that is 1,765 feet above ground. Stated differently, it's 2,655 feet above sea level at the top of it. So it's a big one, and it is very well lit. But here's the thing, and this is the complacency that me as an almost 1,000-hour pilot, it's a hard lesson learned and something that I'll pay more attention to. That I did not look at my route of flight, including flying over this racetrack, and take into account obstacles. Even though I've flown in the area and I knew that it was there, but in the back of my mind, and in a matter of fact, both, I think it's just Gwinnett County's got a towered airport, and then when you're also on the radio with Atlanta Tracon, they warn you about that tower. Hey, there's a tower at your 2:00. Make sure you see it.
Wow.
So anyway, we get up, we circle the. You can, for those that are watching on the live stream, you can see where we did our loop around, and the proximity of that tower. And as I was turning to put my son in view to take photos, I saw that tower right in front of me, and that's great. But it was at that point in time thinking, I should have known about this before I ever got to it. I should have made myself aware. I need to be better about watching for threats on my route of flight, whether it's obscurations, other traffic, flying into a Bravo, whatever the case may be. There are certain aspects of your en route that you shouldn't, even if it's a 15-second glance at a profile view, either in ForeFlight or Garmin Pilot, whatever you use, take a look at it. And that's a complacency that, had that been my first time in that area, I could have run into that tower.
Yeah.
That's a huge one. This is huge. And I recently was planning a route, and I just realized if I went direct, I'd be going over a big natural reserve that if I just scooted my route just one notch over, I'd be following airports going right. There's just so many things with flight planning that are, I think, easily grounds for complacency. Now, when you saw this tower, were you also thinking about, oh, there's wires?
So I did record this flight with my son. I have audio, and my son made the comment that, well, Dad, it's lit up. Why are you worried about running into it? And I said, I'm not worried about running into the tower itself. I said, what do you think's holding that thing up? And then the light bulb went off, and I said, it's the guy wires that are the threat there, and you can't see them. But if you stay 5 miles away from them, then I think you have a pretty good chance of clearing them. And that's what we did, basically, is we made sure we remained clear. So, yeah, that was it. To me, it's the towers at the threats, what's holding it up. So,
well, and also you're flying low, because relatively low, because you want to take pictures. So 1,000 feet off the ground, you don't think about it if you're 8,000 feet up. Yeah,
exactly. And I'm sorry to interrupt you. When it first came into view, I was eye level with the top. Because he wanted to get down to get as close. We wanted to stay 1,500 feet above ground level, which is the lowest I was willing to go with him. So, yeah, it's, again, I'm going to be taking a flight on Thursday, and you can bet on it. I'm going to be looking at terrain, towers. I don't use ForeFlight. I'm one of the 13 people in the world that don't, but Garmin Pilot has a great profile view, and that includes towers and terrain and everything. And it's just and it's not only obstacles; it's going to be airspace. It's all aspects of it.
Does it have something comparable to the Hazard Advisor in ForeFlight, where you can kind of not in the profile view, but just when you're looking at the full view, you can kind of scroll the altitude? Yeah, cool.
Yes, it does. Again, I'm about to hit 1,000 hours, and I'm going to Huntsville on Thursday in the morning, and I've made that flight a dozen times, maybe more, and it's easy for me to go hop in the plane, put in MQI, direct enter, and send it. But it was eye-opening event for me, and I'm curious if anybody in the chat or anybody else has a story similar to that. I don't want to say I got away with one, but it was a great reminder and pull me out of that complacency.
I have a question.
Okay.
Do you think that flying mostly instrument flight plans for a long period of time and then coming back to VFR is a situation that can atrophy your flight planning skills a little bit, in the sense that you're used to flying defined routes. And so now, are you more prone to direct enter in or send it?
I would say that flying solely instrument plans or IFR plans, which I'm starting to do a little less of. I'd say 75% of my flights are filed. If it's something where I'm going to a meeting the next day and I know that I need to get there, I'm going to do it. But on the flight that I went with Noah, my son, it was VFR, and I didn't follow a flight plan. But to your point, it does atrophy my skills in being familiar with the airspaces, because you don't have to worry about it. I don't think it really does on the VFR side of it. I think it's more, I don't have to worry about, busting an airspace, and they're going to keep me out of terrain as well when you're on an IFR flight plan. So, I mean, it's, I think there's a little bit of both in there.
So I have a one of those reminders of when you're dumb and you've been complacent and you realize it. I was when I was flying down in SoCal last year, I went and I was just bouncing around a bunch of the airports, kind of at the edge of the Bravo, when I'd flown through it and everything else while I was there. And I was focused on getting into one Delta, and I was going to bounce out of that and go to the next one over. And I'll put that up, which that was Camarillo and Oxnard. So it's a CMA. And so I landed at Camarillo. It's a ways out. And then I thought, well, when I take off now, those airports are about 6 miles apart and they're both Deltas. And it's really busy traffic between them. I hadn't really planned on that. So I was like, I got in the air. I knew what direction the runway was. I was going to tune up the weather so I could talk to the tower. The problem is that they were close enough and there was enough traffic that I was just kind of saturated with traffic advisories and everything. And instead of kind of bailing and heading out a ways, I kind of kept going in. I kept on the flow that we were in. And they said, do you have, Victor? And I was like, no, I don't. And they're like, okay, come on in. And I did. I came in. I landed on this, 7,000 foot runway. It's the only runway they've got. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna taxi off and go back. I don't want to do it touch and go. Get off and kind of settle things. Because I hadn't listened to the ATIS, I missed that all of the taxiways except for the very first and the very last one were closed. So here I land on the first 2,000 feet of the runway, and I've got to taxi another 5,000 feet to the end of the runway, and they've got to call people that were lined up behind me and get them to go around because I didn't do my homework, right? Like, I'm just going to come in and just do one landing. It's no big deal at a new airport. That was really, for me, it was really one of those reminders of complacency and how I'm lucky that's all it was, right? But man, how stupid did I feel with that?
Yeah. I mean, I imagine every pilot's been there multiple times. Let's just hope it's these minor things that bring us out of the complacency. Our friend of the show, One Dull Geek, I think he's kind of taken it a little bit to an extreme. I'm not sure that I want to go out and handwrite a navlog. God bless him for it, though. I recently did a long cross-country flight, VFR pilotage and dead reckoning. First, it was a blast, but more importantly, it really helped re-engage VFR flight planning when I had to calculate wind correction, etc. It's a great refresher. I love that you did it. I think it would be kind of cool to do that every now and then, just to kind of keep those chops sharp.
I think one of the things that we haven't really spoken to yet, which is, I don't want to say it in this way of like, watch out for Ted coming in, right? But I had an incident, or I had an experience today that was one of those reminders also that you have to be really, really aware that there's a lowest common denominator. We're all trying to take care of ourselves and therefore take care of other people. But it's only as good as the weakest link in whatever traffic situation that you're in or whatever. I was flying into Music City Executive today and it was pretty busy. And I was just coming in to do a landing and then taxi back. I was going to see if my tail wheel instructor was over there or not or whatever, just kind of hanging around. So I was just casually coming in and I realized that I was putting myself into a little bit of a hornet's nest, but I felt good about what I was doing. I maneuvered on the 45, left downwind for 3.5. Everything was great. There was reasonable spacing. There was a few things going on. The first thing that happened was there was somebody crossing midfield, and I could never even repeat or explain. I was trying to tell Katie this earlier, and I couldn't even explain it, but he had the most incredibly detailed call that was explaining what he was doing that was such word salad that you could not. Everything he said was a landmine for 3 interpretations all in one call. And it was a lot of, it was one of those things where it was really only going to affect the people that were behind me, turning crosswind to downwind. I was going to be sort of past what that situation was going to amount to. But this guy made this crazy sort of mucked up call stating his intentions and how he was going to come into the area and what he was going to do to teardrop and all this. But it was just a whole lot of stuff. I just remember thinking, well, I really don't understand anything that guy said, but I sure as heck hope that those people behind me really, I guess they understood it because I didn't understand it. And then right after that, they got on and went, hey, about your, like when you say this, they had to really just kind of stop the works there and get clarity from this guy. So that was sort of the first thing. And then the other thing that happened was, and actually this is slightly before I even got to the downwind, I was coming in and there was, I think it was a Saratoga, and he was coming in. So the runway's 3517, active runway's 35. This guy was essentially flying on the departure, coming in and announcing, but he was just basically saying, I'm going to join or I'm going to, how did he even word it? It's like people do these things that are so stupid that I can't even figure out like how they even communicated it sometimes. But basically he was joining the pattern on the crosswind. And I mean, I've seen people do all kind of things, and I guess that's like a thing that people do, but he had, so I was just observing this. He was a little bit ahead of me and in a faster plane. So I was just letting it play out, and he hears me make my call that I'm maneuvering for the downwind. And he says to me on the radio, he's like, hey, 16 Lima, are you going to be number 2 on the downwind? Essentially, relative to him.
Yeah.
And it was really his way of saying, that I'm here first. But it was the closest I've ever come to saying something really snarky on the radio. I don't want to be that guy. I hate it when people say,
oh man, yeah,
when they get into it with each other on the radios, and I can't stand it. This is the closest I've come, though. I was a little irritated, but he asked me, he said, hey, 16 Lima, are you number 2? And I said, what did I say? I said something like, well, I said, yes, if you've entered the downwind from the crosswind, or I said, if you've entered the pattern, that's what I said. I said, if you've entered the pattern on the crosswind, then yes, I'm number 2, but it was just, I don't know what the guy was thinking. I don't know if that's complacency or if that's just, I'm going where I want to go, but either way, that's a huge area. I think pattern entries and doing things the proper way. I think a lot of people get complacent in areas and environments that they're familiar with.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, joining the pattern on the crosswind, I think that used to be a thing that actually came up, and it reminded me to give a couple of quick shout outs to some of our community members. Biff B, Mike Alpha Golf, and our very own One Dog Geek all had big check rides that they passed in the last week. And
Yes.
joining the pattern on the crosswind was part of the debrief we had with Mr. Biff on his. So he knows something about that. You can see that in the chat. But we do want to say congratulations. That's huge accomplishments. Private for Biff and Mike Alpha Golf. I don't know why I'm struggling with that. And then a commercial for our friend One Dog Geek. So very happy for all of y'all. Congratulations.
Yeah, we had this private debrief with Biff and some other people, and this topic of entering the pattern on a crosswind came up, and it was interesting. It, as Wendell Geek said, it must have been something in the past, and if anybody knows where that comes from, please hit us up. If there used to be a recommendation from the FAA to enter on a crosswind, please let us know. But the main thing I wanted to say is we had this debrief with Biff, and it's always great. We always learn when we get the chance to debrief with people, and whether it's people that are before that point, pre-check ride, or people that they did this in the, man, I can't remember when my check ride was now, right? Like you still learn, and that was a good example of it. But I have a clip from that.
And before, I was just going to say, prior to that debrief, I'd never heard of a crosswind entry into a pattern.
Yeah.
I'd never heard of it. I honestly didn't. So go ahead with that.
Yeah. So anyway, I pulled a clip out of it to share. Biff was talking about doing his soft field landings. So here's that clip.
Really have a feel for the crosswind that had now come into play, because it was pretty much blowing straight down the runway, all the rest of it. And now it had flipped around and was basically a direct crosswind. I still struggle with, especially soft field, because you have that extra angle of attack. So it's really catching the wind more. So my crosswind, which is sketchy at best on a normal day, when you throw in that extra pitch attitude, kind of goose with me. So we come in and I just started drifting off, and I'm like, oh boy. But at this point, I'm so close to the ground, I should have just done a go around. I should have. Wish I would have. But we came down, and I did not take out any taxiway light, but it was close on my side. It was probably one of the worst landings I've ever done, ever. But we were down. So I'm like, okay, good. We're done. So we get to the hold short. I'm going to do my after land. And he's like, you can do one better than that. And I was like, you're right. I can. I have. He's like, well, you're going to do one right now. I'm like, okay. So away we go. And then this one went better. I came in, nailed the center line, which was good, but really plopped it in pretty good. I think there was even some bounces. I mean, it was another very not pretty landing. And I'm like, wow, that was pretty much it. So we taxi in. He just got out of the plane, walked inside. So I walk in, he's got the certificate in front of him.
Yeah. What an experience. It's like, you did poor on that. You get to do it again. Like, no. I think crosswinds are the thing that one of the worst things the things I had the least amount of experience with by the time I did my check ride. And it's one of the things that I've developed since then.
And I'll say this too. That's an area of complacency that can get you in real trouble.
Yeah.
Not going out and practicing a crosswind landing every now and then when the opportunity arises. That is a skill that can get rusty and can come back to bite you. I'm not a CFI. I'm just speaking from experience here. It's bit me in the past.
I have a question, Ben. Have you ever deliberately practiced landings at a much higher approach speed or landing speed than what you normally would ever do? Because when you're learning, if you come in super fast, it just means all kinds of problems, right? But when you've got more control and more time, I was just curious if you ever practice landings.
So I've done a version of that. I still practice this. I will practice no flaps landings, 10 degrees, 20 degrees, and 35 degrees. To answer your question, that's going to give me different approach speeds. And even on, round out, I'm still going to be going a little bit faster with no flaps. But I'm training myself to learn how to bleed that speed off in those different configurations.
Yeah. Because Geek is saying, wasn't that result in a float or a bounce? And of course, that's what you're going to get, one or the other. I guess I was doing some landings today where I was just like, I don't know, I'm just going to come in, 10 to 15 knots fast and just give myself a lot more time to bleed off energy and maintain control.
You want to make sure you have a lot of runway or you're prepared for a go around, one or the other, if you're going to practice that. I think that's part of one of the other things that I did in my private training. It just made me think of is my instructor. I was struggling. I was coming in too fast, and our plane doesn't like to float. I mean, it floats not as much as a 172, but still floats a little bit. It's just heavier, and so you smack the ground a little bit harder. And one of the things we did, he called it dragging the runway. And basically, as soon as we get probably 10 feet above where we would normally round out, we put in a little bit of power and we arrest that descent, and we're staying 10 to 15 feet above the runway and just trying to fly it as slow as we can to get that sight picture of the speed that you're trying to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think that's another way of doing what you're saying is coming in at a higher speed to learn how to manage that energy.
Well, for tail wheel, that's what we did a lot of, because in order to get a good wheel landing, you've got to find a setting that is going to give you the most meager descent rate possible with a really upright sight picture,
Right.
And it's not what you're used to seeing. If you're used to flying Cessnas and Cherokees and whatnot, you're used to kind of being in that landing attitude. That's and that's more accustomed to the 3-point landing. But for a wheel landing, it's just everything about it is antithetical to what you've done. And I guess there's part of that just had me curious about, even though I'm flying a Cherokee, I've gotten this experience to where I'm, especially, of course, long runway, but to really just keep that speed up. And here's the other reason why I was just curious about it. One is it was pretty gusty today. And so I was kind of having fun with it to see, what if I just went full in this kind of mindset of I'm just going to wildly outpace all of this. I'm just going to penetrate all of this to the point where it's almost nullified, right? So I actually came in on final really, really fast because I was behind a King Air anyway. So, I wanted to show up. But, and I just thought, you know what? I'm not going to slow this thing down to 68 knots or 65 or 70 knots. I'm not going to do it. I came in, with, I think, 1 notch of flaps or maybe 2, and probably 80 knots, which is, pretty fast in a Cherokee 180. And I had one of the greasiest landings that I've ever had. And I realized there's something about the Cherokee, because it doesn't float, a Hershey bar Cherokee, it's just going to sit. And so when you're really coming in, even at 70 knots, 73 knots, coming in a little faster, it just gets to this point. And even if you leave power in, however you do it, it's pretty hard to get did we just landing, right? I'm talking about like the greasiest of the grease, right?
We call them 0 Gs.
Yes.
0 G landings.
Yeah. And I realized I had a 0 G landing today, and it was because I was going 80 knots. So I could just slowly, just patiently let this thing come down with enough speed to where it never did that kind of fallout kind of a thing. I mean, you can get the greasy stuff at slower speeds, but in a Cherokee, it's a much tighter ring to hit,
right.
Whereas in a 172, it's like all day, no problem. So anyway, faster speeds. I was just curious about that.
Did you land with that higher speed, or you bled that off before you landed?
I definitely was 2 feet off the runway going way, way too fast. And I don't know exactly what the speed was when it actually dropped, but it was certainly a lot higher than normal, because what I'm doing is in the Cherokee, I'm just leaving, 1400 RPM or something in, I'm not chopping it and dropping it. And you can even make really impressive short field, get off at the first taxiway, whatever kind of landings, and be leaving power in. It's just going to make it, I don't know, a little, but that's also a trap, right? Because for short field, which is really what we're talking about, you got to get the plane down. I guess I was just sort of thinking about like, it's not about the greasy landings, right? It's about, especially if it's raining or, something, you need to make contact, get positive contact, stop the plane in a reasonable way, so we're not instructors here, but this is just my experience. I was just curious, Ben, if you had ever just like what's your typical landing speed in the 182?
We're crossing the fence at 75, and we're at 70. It's miles an hour in my plane.
Yeah.
And
that's like 15 knots, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, 65, I touchdown.
Okay.
And yeah, but I have come in, like I said, with no flaps. I'm doing 85 on final, maybe even 90 on final, and doing 80 over the fence. I mean, it's a good bid.
Yeah.
And those are my 20-degree flap landings seem to be better than my 35-degree. And it may be because I have a little bit more speed since I'm using less flaps, but to the point where Noah hates complimenting me on my good landings, and it was painful for him, but he had to
had to give it up.
He had to give me the shout out. So,
well, I'm so happy for all the check rides passed and all the mountains conquered. That stuff is huge, and I 100% relate to the feeling of, man, I totally blew that. Wait, I passed? Awesome, thank you. I definitely had that check ride experience with my short field landing. It was, I did not think I passed. So congratulations to everybody. And now the learning can really begin.
That's right. Just a few quick comments. I'm getting roasted in the chat on my landings. So I think at the fly-in, all I'm going to be doing is just doing laps in the pattern with different people to show them that I actually can do have a decent landing. So, anything else for the good of the order?
No, we don't have any feedback this week. So send us some feedback. Just go to our website or email us at midlifepilotpodcast@gmail.com. Or go to midlifepilotpodcast.com. You can send us voice messages there. It's super easy. We really like the voice messages. That's good stuff.
Yeah, it's nice to be able to play them on so you don't just have to hear our voices. Any fly-in news? You mentioned getting space at Tune.
Working on that. Yeah. So the aim is to have a designated area for all of us to park all of our planes. If you haven't filled out the RSVP, or I guess there's a website. If you just go to our website,
midlifepilot.com.
No, it's not.
midlifepilotpodcast.com.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. midlifepilotpodcast.com. It will be in the show notes. You see it on our screens. Do not listen to me.
No. So if you go there, you can hit a button that takes you to the kind of event page that we have for that, and you can raise your hand there and say you're coming, whether you're going to be sticking around, leaving, how you're, whatever. All that information. We definitely want to keep up with everybody. If you've raised your hand and said you're coming, and then now you're not, let us know that too, because we are, the karaoke machine rental for Ben is not cheap, but we got to know exactly how much wattage we're packing here. So
right.
That's very important. So super excited about it. April 26th, 27th, 28th. And I don't know. I think we've got 40 or 50. I don't know what we've got. A lot of it's going to be crazy.
Yeah. And maybe when we get a little closer to it, maybe sometime next month, like around the 10th or 11th, we can maybe update our fly-in sheet and say, are you coming or not? It'd really be nice to have a head count of those that are definitely coming. And it's kind of hard to ask people to do it at this point in time.
Yeah.
But, we want to make sure that we can accommodate everybody.
And
at
the compound sold out.
Gathering. So say again?
The compound is sold out.
The compound sold out, but we can have people over to tell war stories and have Ted sing karaoke with me.
Yeah. Now nobody's coming. Yeah.
Well,
now we're down to 4 people. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say.
This is
if you've
one
ever
you
heard me
guys might
sing,
know.
you would be staying out of the state of Tennessee.
Yes.
This is a little ditty by a guy you might know called Kenny Loggins.
Now, how about the wreck of Edmund Fitzgerald?
Awesome, guys. Well, patreon.com/Midlife Pilot Podcast. You know where all our stuff is. You can link to everything at www.midlifepilotpodcast.com. Everything is there. Guys, thanks for the talk tonight. It was a good chat, I thought.
Yeah.
Thanks to everybody in the chat for roasting me. I really appreciate it. It feels good. Josh M., we're glad to see you back in the chat. And closing out episode 62 of the Midlife Pilot Podcast. Good night, everybody.
Good night.